Welcome to Feel the Heat, a 5 Reasons Sports Network Miami Heat podcast. Hosted by Alana Tahauer and Michael Christian. This is your one-stop listen for all things Miami Heat culture, past, present, and future, on and off the court.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to Feel the Heat. Got a nice little bonus episode for y'all this week. Technically episode 6, I think. But I'm here with Michael and a special guest. Michael, who do we have in our studio today?
We are very lucky to be joined by digital host / analyst / reporter for Bally Sports Florida, Jeremy Tache. I'm assuming I'm saying the last name right.
Yes, you are, which is impressive. So thank you.
It's the accent, we noticed.
Yeah, you put the accent on it, and I was like,
you guys.
No one can pronounce my last name
for
ever.
you, huh? Yeah.
I do pride myself on that.
Yeah. I am someone that has literally always had people struggle to pronounce my last name. In 3rd grade, I can't believe I'm telling you all this because now it's out on the interwebs. But in 3rd grade, my honor roll assembly in elementary school, my teacher had pretty messy handwriting. And so the other teacher that was reading the honor roll read it as Jeremy Tushy.
Oh my God, that is the best thing I've ever heard.
As a 3rd grader, there could not have been a worse, like that was as bad as it gets. That was it. And for the rest of 3rd grade, luckily that was in like the 3rd quarter. So it was only a few weeks left in school. But it was traumatic. I'll tell you that. And I've been pretty paranoid about making sure that accent's there.
Yeah, the worst I've ever gotten is Alana teacher, which kind of begs the question of, do you know how to spell teacher, which is concerning for the other person.
Yeah, they could probably use a teacher.
Yeah, but yours is way worse. So I'm sorry that happened to you.
Oh, it's fine. It's only shaped who I am and what I've become. It's fine. No big deal.
You see, that'll be the ultimate litmus test for our podcast, where if we'll know we've hit it, if everyone starts calling him Jeremy Tushy. Okay,
if anybody, one person
calls him Jeremy Tushy, I've made it. I don't care.
I'm starting this campaign now.
So
hold on. Whoa. Maybe
I like a good challenge. I'm competitive. You shouldn't have said that.
Maybe we should pull back. Maybe it should just be like the campaign should be like, get 3 people to tweet Jeremy. Like that's it. Just 3. I'm not trying to make this a thing. Like it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay.
Next goal is to have Jax call him that one day on the show. No, I'm just kidding. That would be so unfortunate. But like I said, we are honored to have Jeremy on here. He does a bunch of stuff with Bally Sports. Of course, this weekend's games and all the future playoff games up until I don't know what round. Make sure you're watching it on Bally Sports. And that's not because Jeremy is here. That is just because you want good Heat content. You're not really going to get that in other places. They don't know the ins and outs of the team so well. You know who I'm talking about those big national media outlets.
Yeah,
ESPN,
Michael's
I'm talking
chicken.
to you. You know what? Fine, I'll say it. Listen, ESPN, I love Sports Center, but y'all don't have the in-depth analysis. When I want the in-depth analysis, I go to Bally Sports. And
also, Michael, I have to call you out for a second. You said however long. We're making it to the finals again. Positivity, manifestation.
Well,
he's not sure how long it's going to be on our network. Which is a fair
okay.
question.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay,
that's a fair question.
That's a good cover for him. Yeah.
Oh, that's
2 against 1 here. I see how it's going to be.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Alon.
Oh, you know what?
It's immediately changing. All right.
No, this is just how it is. This is just how the whole show is. But first things first, you work for Bally Sports. Bally Sports, does stuff with the Heat, has all the games and all that kind of stuff. You are also a Miami Heat fan. You were telling us before we started recording this that you grew up in South Florida. So I've got to ask you, how did you become a Miami Heat fan? Was it just like, hey, I grew up there, so that's just what it was? Or like, what was that story like for you?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, yes, right? Because Dwayne Wade was drafted when I was 8 years old. And I was living in an area, right, where so Dwayne Wade's drafted in 2003. That's the same year, a few months before the Miami Marlins go on, or I guess the Florida Marlins at the time, go on to win a World Series. So at the time, for me, I'm like, Marlins town, baby. I'm a baseball kid. I'm all in on that. And then by 2005, 2006, all my favorite players are gone from the Marlins. And so I'm searching for something else. And the Dolphins basically since this century have been mediocre. So I've never experienced anything that was other than like a couple Ronnie Brown, Ricky Williams years that were fun. I never really experienced with the Dolphins anything to make me passionate about them.
Yep.
And so then there's this Dwayne Wade guy, right? And I'm 10 years old for the '05 run that they don't quite get over the hump, but it's Dwayne Wade and it's clear like who this guy is. And I'm watching in 2006 and I'm watching them get to the finals and I'm falling in love with this team. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm a kid and Shaq, who's the biggest star in the world, right? In the sports world, he's there. And Dwayne Wade's emerging into a superstar. And so you fall in love with the team. And then you start going to games. And like going to a basketball game is a lot of fun. And I didn't go to like a ton of them as a kid, but my parents like treated me so damn well and spoiled the heck out of me and, you know, would bring me to like hopefully a game a year and, you know, then would go to other games throughout town and stuff like that too. So I could fall in love with these sports. And as that went along, you know, you fall more and more in love with these teams and you fall more and more in love with the players and their stories. And then I get to high school and it's the Big Three era. So is there anything better for a high school kid who loves sports than for LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh to be playing for his hometown team? So that's where it goes from like, okay, I was always a pretty big Heat fan. So then when that happened, it takes you to another level because you know the story, you know the history, you've lived through the first championship and the years that have gone, you know, mostly up, but some down since. And so then you get to experience, and I remember it's one of my silliest memories is being, I guess I would have been 14. Don't quote me on that, but I would have been like, I think 14, 2010 is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
LeBron James, right?
You talking about the decision?
15 years old. Yeah, I'm talking about the decision. So I'm either 14 or 15 years old when the decision is made. And I was actually at the University of North Carolina for a baseball camp. And I was there and I was with my parents at a sports bar called the Top of the Hill, which is like the touristy sports bar. It's where like at the time, Butch Davis was the coach at UNC in football, where he had his like daily radio show or whatever. Roy Williams did his thing out of there. It's UNC's like spot for the alumni. And we're there. And the decision is on TV, but there's no volume. It's just closed captioning. And so my brother and I'm 14. That means he's, you know, 8 or 9 years old at the time. And so we're standing at the sports bar. It's like all these college kids and all these tourists, and it's mostly just people from North Carolina. And we're standing there and we're reading, and nobody cares. I hear them in the bar. The Bulls would be cool, or the Knicks would be cool. Whatever. Nobody cares. And we see, and I remember it clear as day that the closed captioning changes to where the first words you see on the next line when it cleared was South Beach. And we sprinted across this sport, screaming. We're 14 and 8 years old. We're like, oh my God, LeBron James. And for the rest of the night, all I did for the entire time was just go, we have LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. We're never going to lose a game again. Like I was 14. It was perfect. And so, you know, that's where it evolves from, you know, you're a casual fan who loves the team around the area to like, okay, maybe you have a problem. And that's when social media starts to kick off too.
Yep.
Right. So now you're on Twitter. Now you're interacting with all of Pete Twitter as it's coming to be. You're interacting with your friends on social media, even on Facebook at the time. So obviously all those things sort of climb through. And then, you know, I went off to college. My freshman year was the last year of the Big Three. You know, you go through the following year since, and then I was fortunate enough to where my first job in sports media was down here at WSVN. I was a producer over at Channel 7. And so for the last few years, before having to actually be in the space where I covered this team in a way where anybody was paying attention to me, I got to sort of learn how to cover the team as a fan, right? I figured out, okay, here are the things that I can acknowledge in my fandom, and here are the spaces where I have to be able to pull back and put on like the quasi journalist hat. And obviously, as someone that is working for the network that is team partners with the Miami Heat and acknowledging I'm a Miami Heat fan, I can say and acknowledge like, yeah, I want Jimmy Butler to be the MVP, and I think Bam Adebayo should be the defensive player of the year. Like, yeah, I have some of those biases, but I also think that those are like, I can critically analyze why. And if you want the numbers to back it up, I'll find the way. And so I try to like merge my coverage and my fandom where I can. And I know that wasn't the question, but that's like the space where I've ended up.
I mean, I thought that was a great segue because that was going to be my second question. I mean, that is just you being on top of the ball, right? That is just you being Jeremy Tache, who
Jeremy
now,
things.
yeah, it's just Jeremy things, right? We had some off-air conversations right before we started this, so I know what to expect with this kind of stuff. But this podcast is about the Miami Heat. We want to talk a lot about culture, and it's become such a key word, such a phrase that at times I will say, and we do a podcast on it, there are times where that phrase comes up and it annoys me because I feel like it's just a cop out for people to do certain things. But there's also so many more times where I'm like, if that doesn't so deeply and perfectly describe exactly what this team and franchise is, I don't know what else would. So what is it about that? What is it about the word, about the feel with the organization, both as a fan, now covering the team, that you're kind of, and now you're closer to it, right? Do you feel it even more? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny. It's funny you ask, because this is the first time I've ever had to like really consider that as somebody that now works a little bit closer to what it is that the Miami Heat do. And I was just thinking about it as you were saying all that, what the culture means to the Miami Heat. And I think what's cool is that, like, when you say culture and you say Heat, it can kind of mean a couple of different things. Because what it means in a lot of our minds is the on the court. It's the Udonis Haslem, get in the gym, the undrafted guys, outwork you, Jimmy Butler, being the maniac that he is, and everything that it turned all of the players who have been legends in Heat history into, and even the role players who they've turned into stars, right? But then there's also the fact that the Heat really embrace like Miami's culture. And like, there is something about going to a Heat game, despite the fact that they're like, hard hat and, bucket. They're creating a party atmosphere. They acknowledge like the Latin flair that Miami has. They embraced the, Miami Vice. When LeBron was here and they were the villains, it was like, the black tie, like,
Yep.
They do this amazing job of also embracing like pop culture in itself. They were part of the reason the Harlem Shake blossomed into being like the biggest thing on the internet. It was huge, and then they did it and it became massive. So like, it's really cool that Heat culture can kind of mean a couple of different things there. And it can be like the fun, cocky, in your face, like we're just having a good time. And then also we're going to outwork you. And it's this weird thing that a fan base can personify both of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we love when Udonis Haslem's getting in a fight because we love like the grind it out, whatever, but also because we love that like he's doing it in Dwight Howard's face specifically, because we're like the cocky group. So there's this really funny dynamic there where you have this fan base that like appreciates Rodney Magruder and also loved Birdman and also loved Derek Jones Jr. And they're all like totally different things, but the same, like, we love that role player because they embody something about this everlasting culture. And that's, I don't know, it's something that's cool that maybe it does exist in other places. Like we all were just talking about beforehand. I mean, I'm from here. This is what I've grown up around. Like I haven't seen the underbelly of other franchises the way that I've gotten to not only. Yeah. Well, and so
I'm in Chicago, and I can guarantee you that this is not happening out here. So I do definitely
so
think
there
it's
you go.
Miami.
So it is unique, and it's special. And I do think that, like, despite the fact that this fan base nationally and probably understandably gets some flack, like we as a whole, there are some things to make fun of, no differently than I acknowledge. I mean, differently because I think there will be some people listening to this that would be mad at me if I grouped them together. But I'm also like, I'm a UCF guy. And so obviously, like, I have to acknowledge, I understand why people make fun of us, right?
Nope.
Like, I know the shortcomings of the UCF football fan base. I also understand the shortcomings of the Miami Heat fan base in the ways that people nationally would perceive it. To me,
well, and it's not just nationally, because I mean, I have been very vocal about Heat Twitter lately, because when I'm going to age myself, but back in the day, this was not what Heat Twitter used to be. I don't feel like, now Heat Twitter every day has a different opinion depending on if a guy is doing well or not. Their opinions change like the wind. And I feel like, Heat Twitter used to be kind of ride or die. Even if their takes were outrageous, they stuck to it. And even if they were proven wrong to the end of the season, they reiterated and were like, but if this would have happened, I would have been right. Whereas now I feel like every single day it's something else. If Tyler's not having a good game, all of a sudden move Tyler. And then the next day they're like, what? We never said that. And it's wild.
I wonder how much that has to do with success. Like, I wonder how much that has to do with the Heat went to the finals last season. And so, like, I was 14, 15 years old when the big three stuff was going on. So I wasn't really like critically analyzing it the way that I look at Twitter now. It was just some website that we were all on and we were all just spewing opinions. I wonder if it was the same then. And I would imagine that it probably was. That like in 2000, you don't think in 2011, 12, people were talking about Carlos Arroyo's minutes?
Because I'll give you this one, Alana, because you look at those 2010 to 2014, and I know you and I have argued about the regular season and how much it matters. There was something about those 2011 to 14 Miami Heat that no matter what happened in the regular season, you knew exactly where the season was going to end. It was going to end in the finals, and it was going to either end with a trophy or not. And so there was a lot of, oh, I said this about the player and I'm going to double down on it, but it doesn't matter when you know you're going to win the Eastern Conference. Right now, you're looking at a team that has had some ups and down seasons. You can't shy away from that. And so it's become kind of a, oh, well, you know, maybe we were wrong on that player because now they're somewhere else.
No, but even in the forgotten years, I feel like when people like stuck to their guns, it was one thing. Like there were those diehard like Dion fans, and of course, over a season or two. And that was ridiculous. Like that should have been something that they changed their minds on, but instead they just kept going and going.
I'll still double down that I think Justice Winslow could be a good player in the NBA.
And there you go. I would rather you double down on a take than kind of just every day it's something new. I sound like an old man of like, just get off my lawn. And every show I say this.
No, I kind of like it. I kind of like it. I kind of like that you're so strong in the take that everyone should be strong in their takes. To me, if I look at the past and I merge it with the present and I say, okay, think about how strong everybody was on these things, right? And it paid off always. And then they were strong about everything and then it didn't pay off. And so starting last year and then not for whatever, and then like all of our brains got totally scrambled in reality because you know what the last year has been also. And so now the internet is insane and everyone's just scared of everything all the time. So every time an athlete on your team does like twists an ankle, you're like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. This is over. We're done. You know, so I think that it's like the combo of like, okay, these teams had success and it always was backed up. Then you're firing off these hot takes and they're not getting backed up. And so now you're a little gun shy. And then your team gets to the finals and you're like, wait, are we supposed to be cocky?
Whip the guns out again.
Are we supposed to be confident? Oh, wait, now they've lost 12 out of 15. What happened? And so I think everybody just was like, it's like whiplash. So, but it's almost kind of fun though, because now it's also created a couple of different sections of Heat Twitter where there's folks like you and I that are kind of staying like, I'm just gonna fire that take from the beginning of the year and I'm gonna find a way to back it up until the bitter end. And then there's everybody else doing the oscillating in between, and it's at least a fun soap opera to watch.
And it's also because the players that you were making assumptions on in those 2011 to 14 teams, you were going out on a limb for Carlos Arroyo making 2 threes a game, maybe. Now you're making takes on Tyler Hero, who, and I can see him in your background, Jeremy. You've got the serial.
I've got those too.
Tyler comes out with a serial. He goes a game where he's 0 for 7 from 3, and everyone's gonna say, oh, it's because of the serial or something. That's just the stakes are just different. The players on the team are different. And back then I could have said LeBron's gonna do this. He was gonna do it. No matter what, even if he didn't do it tonight, he was going to do it the next game or by the time they got to the finals. It's gotten so wild with the Heat that.
Yeah. And what's fun is that like this team in reality, like what is weird is, and I've said this about the beginning of this Marlins season as well, because remember, baseball's 162 games. To react to 10 of them is insane. Like, especially the first 10. And so I think a lot of what we experienced this year was all of us, and I say us because I'm saying grouping in as like from the fan perspective, but even from the media perspective, everyone was still sort of in like championship mode by the time this season started. Like, if you think not just the players, like the fans too, you know, we had to do a little bit of adjusting of like, oh, whoa, hold on. These games like count again toward the next season. Like these are real basketball games that matter toward like for what happens this year. Like I remember the first 10 or so games being like, how is this really the next season? There's nobody there. You're like, and think about the fact that half the season was played without attendance, and now you've got 10,000 fans in the city. Like this is the asterisk year, in my opinion. Like the bubble year is a weird year, and you split it in half, and it is its own asterisk in a way where like guys like Bam and Tyler could make a jump in between the first half of that season and when they came back, and Jason Tatum did the same. So it's not just like there were plenty of guys that did that. There were adjustments for all teams, but this is the year that's the asterisk season. How many teams? The Heat were 33-19 when they had Jimmy Butler. He missed how many games because of COVID? Like with COVID-19, with the disease, not like because of a sprained ankle, not even because of protocols, because he was out, and then had to come back and adjust to that. So we're talking about this like it's a real, like LeBron out in LA, he's hurt. Anthony Davis gets hurt. This is the like asterisk strange season because of the way it started, because of the way that it's now ending. And you're going to have an NBA Finals where I bet you're going to have 75% capacity, where you had 0 fans at the beginning of the year. Like it's wild.
And for the players too, it's changing because you go from shooting in an empty arena to shooting
totally
to
different
10%
thing.
to 50% to 75. Like it's totally different.
And we can all pretend like it's not a totally different thing. These are human beings. They have brains, they have emotions, they have feelings. Like we acknowledge that. Like that's a thing that all of a sudden you're Tyler Hero, you're going 1 for 8 in front of nobody. You can come back the next night and go 6 for 8 and be fine. Or even you go the first half 1 for 5, not feeling yourself. You're Hero, you're none, you're whoever. You can come back feeling confident because who you proving it to? The 6 media members in the stands with our, shirts half untucked. No, when you all of a sudden you got, 15,000 people in an arena, that does change things. Like whether the players would acknowledge it or not, like if I can feel it right now, like it feels different being in there. Like at the end of games, my adrenaline is pumping in a different way because there's people there. How do you think it feels on the court? And so, it's one of those things. It's interesting.
Well, and like you've got a lot of fans that are going to be there for this upcoming series as well against the Bucks,
including your girl right here.
You see, I was about to do that. I was about to say it was going to be you, and you just go. No, go ahead. Go to the next.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just so excited.
I had this great setup. I had this great setup where I was going to be like, and one of the 3 of us will be at the game. Unfortunately for me and Jeremy, it's not either of us. And I was going to throw it to you.
Anyway.
There's the setup. You did it.
Man,
congratulations.
Just take us to the next question.
A pro.
I will say, while we're on the topic of the playoffs, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on, how you thought that culture got the team through the bubble and what made them so successful there. And then what, if anything, you think translates onto this season in the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, last year, I think that team was sort of built for the bubble. They were a group of guys, and they still are a group of guys that liked each other a lot. How many NBA teams do we know that just don't like each other? And they don't have to. Teams can win championships without liking each other. It's happened forever. But when you're put in a scenario where now you got to live with each other in a hotel, and it's essentially like an AAU tournament all over again.
Yep.
Having the combination of some young, silly guys that are gonna entertain you. Like if you don't think Tyler Hero was just straight up entertainment for Goron and UD, and they were just telling him to do silly stuff all the time, and he probably was, because he was Tyler. He was 19, hanging out because he was a year removed from AAU basketball, and that was an advantage. The teams that were able, and if you look at it, I mean, if you look across all those teams, right, the teams other than LeBron, because LeBron, but if you look at it, there was a pretty good mix of youth and veterans on those teams. They weren't a lot of veteran laden teams, and they weren't a lot of very young teams. There was a good mix because you needed the veterans to be able to keep the guys in check, but having the young guys that were used to AAU life of traveling all around and staying in hotels, they seemed to thrive in that environment. Tyler Hero was great, right? I mean, and if you look across, Devin Booker for that matter, I know he was a few years further removed, but these are still guys from that era. Anybody 27 or younger right now in the NBA is the AAU guys.
Yep.
So I guess maybe it's not young guys anymore, but still.
Stop. You're doing me harm.
Yeah, me too. More so
Oh,
than
no,
Michael.
no. In the scheme of like, there's 18-year-olds in the league. Everybody relax. It's fine. I went through a major quarter life crisis the other day, so it's cool. So going back to all of it, when you talk about that, their culture as well of like grind and outwork the next guy works perfectly in that environment, because like the boot camp, training camp ideals behind the Miami Heat, they work in that insulated bubble. So that was perfectly fine for them. And I think a lot of those guys were so concentrated on overachieving that there were no other distractions. And that was just kind of how they handled it. And I think it was a perfect environment for them. Do I think they could have still made the finals if they had to go on the road or play at home? Absolutely. Like, I still believe that of that team. I don't think it was that big of an advantage, but I think there were some teams that did break as a result. And so that's more of it. There were teams that couldn't handle it as opposed to the teams that handled it best. When you transfer that over to this season and you look at what the Heat have done, they have the psychological edge going into this series for sure. Like, certainly have the psychological edge going into the series. And realistically, that would be the case all the way through the Eastern Conference. You face the Nets. They're like, if it gets there, right? You face the Nets. They're the ones with the pressure. The Heat might have made the finals last year, but nobody expects them to make it. And, the Nets have a bunch of dudes that are in interesting scenarios in terms of like legacy. Like, all of them have like a weird pressure on them for their own individual careers that could be combustible. I don't think it will, but it could be. And especially with a guy like Jimmy Butler in your head, like, he's just the opposite of all of them in so many ways. And then you look at the Sixers, and I mean, come on, if it came down to that, they'd fold like Heat in 5, like it's so to me, I look at it and I say, when you transfer it over to this year, the Heat have a plan of attack against Giannis that's proven. What's good is they have some new personnel that actually could be helpful for them this year, that they didn't have last season. They didn't have a guy like Dwayne Dedmon in the paint. And not that he's like a menace defensively, but just a big body there to rebound sometimes. Like, that wasn't really there. Trevor Ariza is a much better defender than Jay Crowder. He can actually guard Giannis at times effectively. Like, Crowder did it because he was there and he was a body, but it's almost like when, and I love Iggy and he's on the Heat, but like, they gave Iggy the finals MVP for giving up 35 a game to LeBron. And it was like, that was the kind of like feeling that we have with Crowder. Like, oh, you just didn't look like a fool guarding Giannis. So we're cool with it. Like, good job. Ariza, I think, can actually do it effectively. And then obviously you have Bam and Jimmy who can do that as well. And I think that I really imagine that they're going to in the most like offensive, psychologically bullying ways, dare Giannis to beat them shooting. I think that's what's going to happen. He shot the ball worse this year than he did last year. And last year they were in a bubble. Like, the fact that he didn't shoot the ball better against them when he did play last year was surprising. So I think they're just going to pack. I really believe their approach is going to be pack the paint. And if Dante DiVincenzo and Jeff Teague and, even Chris Middleton are beating you with some of these threes, like, you're going to live with it. But I imagine that's their approach, because the Heat always also look for that psychological advantage, and they'll do the same. It's like the same thing they would do to Ben Simmons. Like, come on, we dare you, shoot it. At least Giannis, the difference is he has the confidence. He shoots the ball, like, it's something he's willing to do. And if he gets into any sort of run as a shooter, the Heat don't stand much of a chance in this series. Like, if we're being realistic,
I don't think anybody does when Giannis is making threes.
If Giannis is shooting even 30% from 3 in this series, it's going to be really problematic, because that means like he's hitting the open ones. So I think that when you look at what last year did, it gave this team an unrelenting amount of confidence. And what it will help them with is in the moments where they are struggling, in the moments where any one of these players is at their worst. Over the last year, every single one of them has had a moment that they can call back to and go channel that moment. Let me think about what happened when I wasn't playing well at this moment, and it came back to where I was playing well. You could look at Tyler at points in the playoffs and then exploding against Boston. You could look at Tyler from earlier this year into this last stretch right now. You have Goran, you have Nunn, all these guys now, every single one of them has an example that they can call back to from playoff experience.
Mhm.
Every dude in this rotation has a playoff experience that they can pull back to and say like, okay, when we were in this spot last time, here's how we approached it. And like, that matters. Like it does. Again, these are all things that like we can break the game down from a simply numbers perspective. And like, I am someone that absolutely loves numbers. Like I think that they have only made the game more entertaining and are good for all sports if utilized the appropriate way. But these are human beings, and come playoff time, that matters even more because it's when the pressure is on. And it's not to say that there are guys who are chokers, because I don't like to classify anybody as anything like that, but it does influence the way the game is played. And anybody knows, you ever struggle, you're in the middle of taking a test in a classroom. If you've been in this situation before where you've been panicked, but you can harken back to the knowledge that you have from a previous class or a previous time taking a test and breaking down and problem solving, it allows you to thrive and then get through the moment of your nerves or get through the moment of your struggle and then succeed. It's no different in sports. And so I think all these guys having that type of experience is going to be really helpful.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point, because I have been very vocal about the fact that I think a lot of our struggles this year were mental. I think that, both Duncan and Tyler around, especially the trade deadline, were not looking like themselves. Michael is going to probably throw me under the bus here because he does this every episode. I called Duncan one-dimensional once upon a time. Michael, I'm sorry. I knew it was going to come.
Wait,
like
hold on a
everybody
second.
did.
I never did. I will stand on that, and I have
Proud of
videos
you,
to prove
Michael.
it. Thank you. But also,
Proud of you, Michael.
This is three episodes in a row now where you've brought it up.
Because I know you're going to do it to me, so I would rather just, get ahead of the curve here. But
Sure.
He did not look, like himself, and Tyler was struggling too. And even honestly, Kendrick Nunn, I think for a while there, when he was seemingly being benched for kind of no reason, you could see that they were in their heads. But I think to your point, they are so good at bouncing back from whatever, even if it takes a game or two. And I think that, going into the playoffs, it is a different level. Like everyone is locked in on such, just an intense kind of vibe. And especially Jimmy, I think he's doing a great job of leading that. And I think even looking at the difference between Giannis's kind of quote being like, I don't know if this year's any different. And I know it was taken a little bit out of context. People clipped that a certain way at first.
Totally out of context, but I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to run with it. But, you have Jimmy over here just saying that he's incredibly locked in. So even if it is a kind of, and I don't think it is, but even if it was like a fake it till you make it type of mindset at first before they actually get there, I will take it because I think that that's so important for them. With that said, though, just could kind of move into this. Michael and I have been giving players their props every week to kind of do a Heat Culture Player of the Week. And we were thinking back and we were like, okay, the season's over. Obviously, playoffs are a different beast. Why don't we kind of see, who we think did well in the regular season? Who would your pick be?
So we're saying for the full regular season,
like full regular season,
culture player of the
culture player. That doesn't necessarily mean that they had to be the best player on the court, but who do you think has embodied kind of the Heat culture throughout the season?
Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna caveat it by saying the answer is.
I love a good caveat.
Jimmy. Like the answer is obviously Jimmy.
Yeah.
Like that's the caveat is we all know it's Jimmy.
Yep.
For every reason. Okay. My answer will be Trevor Ariza. The reason I say Trevor is every night he plays defense, and like that is Heat culture, right? And I will also say like his trade was a major turning point in the season. Acquiring Trevor Ariza, and as soon as he started playing significant minutes, this team completely changed. They were missing Jay Crowder. Like they weren't missing, and everybody's talked about this till they're blue in the face. It was a conversation for the first 4 weeks of the season. They weren't missing the Jay Crowder. The Jay Crowder is statistically over his career. They were missing the Jay Crowder that existed in the bubble that couldn't be duplicated. But Trevor Ariza's kind of done it. Trevor Ariza has been amazing. And what's so cool about adding him to the team was we all know there was a certain subtraction in making that deal at a time where the season totally could have imploded. For a number of different reasons there. Could have been a circuit. Like, it's just like his move was really important in a lot of different ways. But then when you do strictly talk about like the on the court stuff, Trevor Ariza is always prepared. He doesn't make mental mistakes. He'll sometimes make physical mistakes, but you never see Trevor Ariza like out of position where Jimmy's turning around going, "Hey, what the hell?" Like that's never going to happen. And he's, he's a grizzled vet, in that way. But to have a guy who is so well traveled, who came in and basically said, "I'll do whatever you guys want. Like, if you want me off the bench for 10 minutes, that'll be my role." And then earned his way to be the starting power forward undoubtedly, and has played defense every night. His hands are in there on steals. He's pressing guys up at the top of the key. I mean, he's doing all the little things. And, he's just another one of those guys that you guys have seen it the same way I did. When he's not out there and it's just Jimmy and Bam and trying to kind of bring the guards along, it's that third front court player that they needed. And then adding Dedmon made it, the fourth to add to Iguodala's fifth, that really cemented now that he'd have a great front court. Where that was a major weakness to start the season, their front court's terrific. And so is their backcourt. That 9-man rotation, really good. Like, you could feel really solid going into the playoffs and say, okay, that 9-man rotation's up there with just about any of these teams in the East. And Trevor Ariza is a huge part of the reason why.
Yeah. Alana, you want to give yours for Heat Culture Player of the Year, and then I'll give mine?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Kendrick Nunn.
You
I'm
literally
sure
stole mine, though.
Really? You
Yeah.
You didn't think that that's who I was going to go with? I feel like this is pretty obvious. I've been consistently praising Nunn since day one, and I think even when he wasn't playing well, I will just give myself a pat on the back for sticking by him. Some of that's because he's from Chicago, so I kind of like felt a certain type of way. But I just feel like the Kendrick we're seeing now, like, is a man transformed from the Kendrick that was at the beginning of the season. Obviously, I know he went through it with COVID, and he claims that he wasn't necessarily that affected by it, but he did say that it lasted longer than a lot of other guys had it, and just kind of getting back into the rotation would have been a struggle for anybody. So for him to go from that to being kind of benched for, again, I mean, maybe there were things behind the scenes we didn't know, but it seemed like not really a great reason, to then coming back out. I think that he has just been like locked in. He's stayed ready both mentally and physically. And I think he's been such a huge difference maker on the court. And I also think that, he's one of the first people to always praise his teammates. I mean, the way he talks about both Duncan and Tyler, and obviously Jimmy and Bam, I think he's been a tremendous asset this season, both on and off the court. So I had to give it to him.
Yep. You know what? And I was going to pick somebody else, but I can't, right? This is like an MVP vote kind of thing. You can't just be like, well, somebody else picked that MVP vote, so I'm going to go with somebody else. I have to say it's Kendrick Nunn too. And I think Duncan Robinson had a fantastic season. I've been on that for a very long time. I love that guy on this team. I think he opens up a lot of things that no one else can do with the shooting and the gravity. For me, it's Kendrick Nunn because I think he changed myself. I was not a big fan of his game last season. I thought he had a place in the starting lineup last season before the bubble, and it was fine. But when we got to the bubble, it just felt like it wasn't his time, right? It wasn't right for him. The way he was playing, I didn't think fit with this team so much. And so I was willing to say, if they move on from Kendrick, it is what it is. And this season, I think what really makes him stand out to me as Heat Culture Player of the Year is that he is doing things that I didn't think he could do, and I think many people didn't think he could do, right? The defensive intensity that he's turned it up to, you didn't see that before. He found a way to learn how to do that, and he's doing it. On the offensive side of the ball, the spot up shooting at the 3-point line, also not something he did particularly well. That's coming up a ton. And on top of that, the alley-oops that he is starting to throw to his teammates, that he's throwing up to Bam Adebayo, which also weren't a regular part of his game. So for me, it's, yes, he has played well this season, but it's the change from second overall in Rookie of the Year voting, and he has improved on that, in my opinion, by a good amount, and has gotten me to a point where now I feel okay and happy saying, if he's in the starting lineup, and I'm a big Depot fan, fingers crossed, whatever it is, I am okay with Kendrick taking those minutes now, because I feel like he can give us a similar level, maybe not the same defensively, but that difference on the offensive side of the ball, that improvement that Kendrick is bringing. So as someone who has been a Kendrick Nunn slanderer in the past, I'm giving him Heat Culture Player of the Year because that change was just absolutely incredible for me to watch. And I think he's become an absolutely vital part to this team.
Me and Michael agreeing on anything too is quite impressive. So I'm glad that it's at least on Kendrick Nunn. Like if I had to pick one thing for us to agree on, it would be him. So
Perfect. There you go. You're welcome. I'm the peacekeeper. I just brought everybody together.
yeah, I mean, he's
L'chaim.
been much nicer to me this episode. So maybe we have to have you around more.
I feel
Michael,
like
don't give me that
The
face.
look on Michael's face.
I just-
the look on Michael's
Here's
face
what
is
happened.
rough.
Right. The Duncan Robinson one-dimensional thing, you would have never known, Jeremy, unless she brought it up. I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah.
You were thinking it though.
Okay.
So I
I
spoke
always
it
think
into the
it.
universe.
But
That's
listen,
hilarious.
this has been an incredibly fun podcast. Just like the way we've bounced off each other has been a ton of fun. I have other questions I'd want to ask you, but we're running kind of short on time. I know Alana has to go do a
You
third
can blame
podcast
Ethan
of the
Skolnick
day.
for this.
Yeah, we'll blame Ethan for
All right,
it.
I'll blame Ethan. Hey, tell
There you
Ethan I
go.
said hi, please.
I will absolutely. I'm jumping on with him next. So
But
please let him know I said hello.
Alana, the playoffs are coming up. You're going to be there on Saturday. But when you're not there on Saturday, where are you watching these games?
when I'm not there,
Yeah, when you're not, because you're there on Saturday. So where are you watching the rest
When
of
you're
the
not there
series?
going forward. When you're not there.
Bally, no hezzo. Only there's no other options. I'm confused by your question.
Exactly. There literally are no other options that people should
Alana
be
gets it.
taking. Jeremy, Jax, Ron Rothstein, of course, Ruth Riley, and you have to throw in the commentators, Eric Reed, John Crotty. There's no other place to check it out. And make sure to follow Jeremy on Twitter. Jeremy puts out Breakfast with Jeremy. Those videos are
Breakfast
awesome.
to Jeremy's. Yeah, thanks, man. I
They're really
appreciate
great. You pick all like your little edit moments and like the jokes you put in and stuff, right? Like
it.
Plus,
good, bro.
breakfast
It's
is the
clever.
best
Yeah.
meal of the day. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I figured why not start it? Why not start the day with me? Huh?
Yeah.
Come
Hey,
on.
honestly,
Great
it's a
question.
nice way to start my day, and I appreciate the videos being out there.
Thanks,
Jeremy,
guys.
again, thank you so much for being here. We'll be back next week for an episode coming out on Tuesday morning like regular. But of course, enjoy the start of these playoffs. And before we go, Jeremy, what is the prediction for this Heat playoff series?
Heat and 5. It's always
Heat and 5. Always Heat and 5. You guys have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Feel the Heat. Can't get enough of your hosts? Follow Alana at Alana Tahauer, TACHAUER, and Michael at Michael5RSN on Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe.